So, continuing with chapter 3 of the modern day book by Reverend Susan MeeLing, that's me. Going on to page 55. I was doing everything I could for both my son and my daughter as equally as best as I could for both of them. While I of course tried for myself as well, my children were and are always my priority. Though I have the issues I deal with and have since waking up from the coma on my Palm Sunday 2000 head injury, I always wanted to make sure no matter what, my children were able to be proud of me and what I did, as I never wanted them to be embarrassed nor especially ashamed of me being their mom. However, while at the same time I wanted to be able to be true to myself and thus never being embarrassed of any of my choices, of which I would always be able to look at myself and never be upset with anything I had done in any way. In turn, that meant I had self-imposed rules for myself, of which I would never pose for any nude images, and though I would have no problem wearing corsets as I have and had in modeling them, I never once allowed myself to send even a text message format of a shot of my exposed breasts, nor of my vaginal genitalia being exposed. I never wanted my children to ever wonder if when they looked at pornography to masturbate, or if they ever worked in any agency which monitored any form of online activity, to ever wonder to themselves, is that my mom? Kind of weird, but it is what it is. However, at the same time, I also wanted whomever I was dating, or if I were to ever get married, I wanted them to know that what we did behind closed doors was just between that person and I. I had never wanted to be in a porn video, nor had I wanted to be exposed in such a way that if I were to ever get married because of someone actually wanting to be with me. Pausing real quick, I have no problem. I've watched plenty of porn myself. I know I'm not the only one. However, it's just not something I feel comfortable with. I'm actually quite modest. They would never have to look at any images or videos and wonder to themselves of any questions which would naturally form. I would guesstimate. I wanted whomever I was with, if that were to ever be, to know without a doubt that I was true to them as I expect of them to be to me. I would not want to wonder about something of that nature. Why would I want whomever I was with to have to worry about that of me? How hypocritical would it be for me to believe in faithfulness to a relationship but then go to do something of such? I remember one message many years ago of which someone sent to me of what looked like a Google Earth picture or a video, and the person asked if that was me in the video or picture, whichever one, which I informed them after containing my disgust for someone having the nerve to ask me that, on no uncertain terms, had I exposed or posed myself to be in anything of that nature. I would be infuriated if I had been videotaped while I was intimate with another person, and would hope only legal ramifications of which they would not be able to weasel their way out of for such attempts. My dead ex-husband showed me one picture he had taken of me without knowing it happened, and it infuriated me to the point I refused to speak with him no matter what those types of conversations led to and involved, which I later learned he kept and had showed some individuals later on. An example of when I found out about the picture still being around was with one person who my dead ex-husband knew when he was alive that I had been introduced to. His name was Terry. And he had seen the picture on my now dead ex-husband's computer when I was trying to find something else to show Terry. I was extremely embarrassed, and I couldn't figure a way to close it out quick enough.
but Terry had already seen what he saw.
I ran upstairs to deal with what I felt, because despite the fact that I've been in the lifestyles I have, I am actually not the type of person, and there's nothing wrong with it. If you're comfortable doing that, you're comfortable doing that. But I'm not comfortable doing that, so don't force me to do something I'm not comfortable with. Don't see how, like, no means no doesn't apply to that. And Terry said later, it's no big deal. Do you know how much is out there of others? When I said I don't care what others do, I don't want that of myself being seen in pictures or video or anything like that. It's just not something I'm comfortable with. Later, when I calmed down, I explained to Terry I'm not that type of person in that sort of way. As Terry and I talked about what his ex-wife had done, Lisa, I think he understood where I was in reference to my viewpoints for such. He told me, meaning Terry, he thought it was okay, and though he thought so, was not the point for me. Since then, I have modeled in various clothes and corsets later, but not which I thought were such overexposure would allow me to be able to feel that I was anything but true to myself, while in turn also being able to know and give such a sense of trust to whomever I could be in a relationship with, that they would always know of my faithfulness to them. Since so many aspects of images can be edited and photoshopped, I did not want there to be a doubt for anyone I was with to wonder of such because of the images and videos type of thing prior. I just didn't feel comfortable. In turn, I wanted to ensure the sanctity of myself for myself, but also for whom I chose to commit to a relationship with. What occurs between a consenting adults is of both or all consenting adults' choice, and taking such a way to then show others I do not condone. While I chose to do with what I choose to do with someone else is exactly that, and vice versa, but I have never accepted being recorded or videotaped in such a way. If such was done to me since my now dead ex-husband had done so when he was alive, I can only hope those involved with such knowingly doing so without my personal consent in private settings would face dire consequences. Do I comprehend certain aspects when a public area? Of course I do. However, since I have not ever been willing to go into such a realm of which I would consent to do that in a private setting, that in turn means I would not be okay with such for myself. If I or anyone were to learn of someone who I was not with, or was either way setting up such, I would not feel though my feelings or opinions mattered to them, and in turn what ramifications for them. Have I not suffered enough? In brief, in reference to the Cowboys dance hall on that evening, a male named Kevin, who would not leave me alone harassing me, that was the prior video. Oh yeah, he had also asked about the donuts. Though I did not hide my injury effects from my now ex-boyfriend, Jesse Leroy Hoover Jr., he was fully aware of them the night we met before he and I went to his apartment in Selma, Texas, nor from his friend who said he was the mayor, nor was that hidden from his friend, Jesse Leroy Hoover Jr.'s friend, who said he was the mayor of Selma, though I recently, at the time of writing this, I looked up a picture, and that was not the male that I met at the pizza shop in Selma, Texas, who had claimed that he was the mayor of that city. That man was about 5'5" or 5'6". He was just a little bit taller than me, stocky build, silvery gray hair with broader shoulders, a polo shirt, and said that he was in the Air Force stationed with Jesse during his officer basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. And he was nearby me when I learned of meaning Jesse Leroy Hoover Jr. was nearby when I learned of my identity theft, and that my son and I were looking at moving towards Florida after filing the paperwork of everything, because I was trying to do what was best for my son after everything that had gone on. And I had spoken with people who are like family to me about where one of them was raised in Leesburg, Florida. Jesse, at some point during the discussion with the claimed mayor from Selma, that he had been speaking with a recruiter for officer candidacy school when he was in Iowa working in communications, though entered the Air Force from Houston, Texas, and his brother David worked for Exxon in Houston. But when 9/11 hit, Jesse had said that he was at Elmendorf Air Force Base in Anchorage, Alaska, with his friend David Warner, or Warner, I can't remember how it's spelled or remember how it was pronounced, during the attacks on the 11th of September in 2001. He did tell me the aspects of the Air Force part, both at Cowboys Dance Hall as well as later on multiple times, including with the claimed mayor of Selma, and then other times thereafter. When I learned of my identity theft beginning in February of 2008, but not learning of it specifically until May of 2013, because it had taken that amount of time for any other apartment complexes I had filed my requests with to respond to me to tell me of the problems with my credit report, that was when Jesse Leroy Hoover Jr. suggested the state of Arizona. He explained to me because of only the good memories with my son James and Lydia for me in Florida, but he said you, it would be heartbreaking for James and I, meaning when he said you, to go to that state, and instead he, meaning Jesse, said we should go towards the west. Though I told him of multiple people who had already been told of my plans for a few months, Jesse told me they don't need to know as remember who you pissed off, and I don't remember ever speaking about that with him, as I had shown him various threatening emails later after he said that, and FetLife messages that had been sent to me. Also, in the back patio of the Thousand Oaks apartment and townhome in San Antonio before leaving Texas after the court case in the San Antonio Family Court, there was no one there. Who supported me. I mean, the lawyer, yes. But by that time, the amount of people that had not believed me when I told them about the threats I was receiving had all gone away. I mean, they were still around, they were living their own lives, but whereas, for example, Discordia on FetLife at that time had said that there were many people in the courtroom for her stealing gnomes in San Antonio, no one was there for me. My son was in school. That wasn't his job to be there for me. His job was to be in school. My biological family, again, had disowned me, but by that time they had pissed me off because of threatening to make an online dating profile for me when I was dating someone else, but it was none of their business. It wasn't for them to know. I hadn't introduced that male specifically to my son yet, and I had not introduced that male that I was dating to any of my friends or who I considered family. So my biological family, as many times as they had already disowned me, they had no right to know who I was dating at that time. And that particular male had listened as my biological mother told me that I needed to be more mature and get over signing the paperwork to give up the legal rights to my daughter, parental. And when that phone call happened, I had literally also just saved his life. And then there were other situations. And so, during the court case, the only person that was there for me, technically, was the lawyer, of course, who did a great job, but my now ex-boyfriend, who wound up taking my son and I to Washington State. Though he did want to go to Alaska after I had went online in Arizona, and there were messages and stuff on FetLife as well as Facebook that had said that I apparently was in Houston, and then like an hour later I was in San Antonio, and then an hour later I was in Dallas, and apparently according to what I was reading, it said, you know, I was threatening people's bosses, and obviously being in the state of Arizona, I mean, don't get me wrong, I have astrally traveled to do stuff to save people, but not to threaten people. And, you know, I made fun of it. I said, oh, look, it's a funny joke. Look, somebody's posting that I'm doing all this stuff. You know, how can I be in Arizona awake talking with you, but apparently, you know, according to, I showed my son Facebook, of course, how can I be in the state of Texas but be in the state of Arizona? I mean, again, as far as the astral traveling aspect, that's one thing, but that, again, is only to save. And yes, I don't deny that when I've astral traveled, I've helped certain situations, but I was not the one firing the firearm. I was the one who protected the United States of America's soldiers, law enforcement, whatever, from different things that occurred. And there have been a few situations where I've protected others in an astral traveling sort of way, but physically in a different location. And so one of the messages before going towards Arizona, Jesse had pointed out it was from a congressman who at that time I didn't know that male that I had been engaged to supposedly had, and not engaged to at the time of the message, but in the message that was received in San Antonio, Texas, I didn't know that the male I had been engaged 2 years before had a congressman as a dad. and Jesse had pointed out that I had pissed off the congressman, and that in the email it showed that he had his daughter on the police force, and his son was in the army, and I was already receiving the threats that I was beforehand, and Jesse had pointed that out to me, and I didn't even know that Sean's dad was supposedly a congressman. That wasn't important to me when I was dating and engaged to him. He told me he worked for the government, but there's a lot of people in the state of Texas who work for the government. But so I don't know whether or not that email from Congressman McCall was actually from Congressman McCall because of all the hacking and stalking stuff, or if it was someone who had done the hacking and stalking. Because when, stop this now, when I was dating and engaged to Sean McCall, first off, the last name McCall is a common last name, not to be rude to anybody. And yes, I remember being told the first name, but because of the way I am, I didn't call him by his first name. I called him Mr. McCall. And while I understand that there were issues in reference to when I had ended the relationship with Sean, that had been because of some stuff that I had dealt with, and I didn't want him to quit basic training to mess that up. And I had already received threats from Sean's ex-girlfriend Leslie, but the threats were to Sean. And I told her in the email, Google would have it because it's susan.meeling@gmail.com. I told her in response, you shouldn't email anything like that because the military won't be okay with that. I didn't take it seriously, I'll admit. A couple weeks later, I had dealt with a situation with another scuba diver when at two scuba divers' residence, and I had shown Rick the corsets that I had bought initially to show Sean, and the roommate Joe had put on my bra. I didn't mind showing Billy, because Billy was like a brother. And then, but mainly I was showing Rick, which, I didn't feel like that Rick was looking at me in that way at all. I don't know why, but I don't think that he was looking at me like that at all. But, after I had been given a beer from, Joe, and I'm a lightweight. I can't even finish, like, a standard pour from a bottle of wine. I can't even handle, like, a third of that for a standard pour for a traditional glass of wine. Beer, I have a lower alcohol tolerance. And when Joe had given me the, I think it was a Corona, it had bubbles at the bottom. And it was kind of weird because I had never seen bubbles at the bottom of a beer. And usually I've seen bubbles at the top of a beer. And so
I didn't drink much to begin with, and I didn't go and get my corsets
until after I had like 2 or 3 sips from the beer, which, isn't much. But I couldn't finish it because, like, whatever the bubbles were that were at the bottom of the glass, or the glass bottle, like, it hurt my stomach instantly. And after putting my regular clothes, or I'd given, or going to go to the bathroom after showing the corset to Rick, I had given Billy the rest of the Corona beer because I was like, I can't finish this. Like, it hurts my stomach, my head feels weird. I can't. Like, I don't like wasting alcohol. So he finished it while Joe was in the bathroom. And then I went to the bathroom to change. Billy wound up leaving. And then Rick had gone to bed by that point. And then when I went to leave the bathroom fully dressed, Joe had attempted to do some stuff, and he threw me on the bed, and I hit my head on the brass part of it, and I smelled what smelled like gun oil, and he had unbuttoned my jeans, and I threw him off of me, and I ran. Grabbed what I could and was out the door. I had a 2-door Toyota Solara convertible at the time. And once I could calm myself down enough, I drove to go back home. Earlier than planned, albeit, but got back to my house. And I couldn't tell Sean that. And Billy was mad at me because I broke up with Sean in a Dear John letter. By that time, I had met several other people, which Sean knew I was in the lifestyle. He had known I had done some modeling. And I didn't remember when I saw Sean again in Cedar Park. He had shown up with a an injury. His finger had been severed. His middle finger had been severed from someone who dropped a tank shell on his hand, claiming that they saw a bee. And I was like, a what? And he said, yeah, they saw a bumblebee. And I was like, no, there's no bumblebees in the state of Texas. That there's wasps, there's hornets, there's not bumblebees in the state of Texas. But because of what I felt from his hand, I mean, I was glad to see him. There's no denying that. I thought he was the one. And I had to take care of his hand because I could tell that there was a deep infection in his hand. And he couldn't move his fingers correctly. And he couldn't even move the nub that was left. The hand was swollen really badly, all the way to his wrist. And he tried to play it off, saying that it was just, you know, the impact. I was like, no. He had a bone infection, and he was about to lose his hand if I didn't do what I needed to do. He would have lost his hand completely, and it would have, by the time if he were to have gone in, it would have been his whole hand, and it would have been past his elbow by the time that he would have gone, because the way he kept pushing it off in that time, it would have gone a lot further. And I did what I did to heal it, so that way he didn't lose his hand. Bone infection was real bad. And I didn't remember about Leslie, his ex-girlfriend, who bitched about James Avery earrings. No offense to the company of James Avery, but there was no stamp on those earrings that she claimed were from James Avery. I've seen better looking jewelry at Claire's and Icing, and no offense to Claire's or Icing, just...
My biological father
had a jewelry business, and I got to hold some extremely expensive jewelry. And one of the easiest tells for any jewelry is whether or not there's a stamp. And there was no stamp. So, and the coloration, I mean, I would guesstimate James Avery at least polishes the pewter instead of keeping it that non-polished color. I mean, maybe a little bit of rhodium finishing or something to just, it was not, like, I've walked by a James Avery store since and looked at the jewelry, and nothing that I saw in those cases was nearly as putrid as what Leslie claimed was a James Avery piece. And no, just, I know I sound like a snob, I don't care. I grew up the way I did. My biological father went to the School of Boulevard. I kinda no jewelry by a lot. And no. And Sean would be able to Sean McCall would very much be able to be like, yeah, she knows jewelry because we went looking at jewelry and very particular and extremely particular. And there's anyway, yeah, but no, the set of earrings that Leslie tried to claim were James Avery, not from what I saw. And I mean, they could have very much in their company, bumped it up after that, but no, I just can't see that. Like, no, just no, it wasn't stamped. I would guesstimate a company like James Avery would probably stamp their stuff. And no, it just, whatever. Leslie had her titty baby temper tantrum and it was like, whatever. Sean, I'm telling you, she's not worth it. But whatever. And those earrings, like, just, ugh. I know I sound snobby, I don't care. But those were not James Avery earrings, and if she was told that those were James Avery earrings by somebody else, that guy lied. Lied. Oh, that guy lied, because those were not James Avery earrings. Those earrings look like, if she was told those were James Avery earrings, then that guy that gave them to her probably put them in a box that said James Avery, but they were not James Avery at all. Not in the slightest. I've seen, as I said, I have seen better jewelry. I've seen better jewelry at, like, just, ugh. Like, just, no, not James Avery. At all. No. Like, if the company of James Avery were to see those earrings, they'd probably be a lot more snobby than I am right now. Just saying. And then, like, as you go up in the levels of companies that own jewelry and do that sort of stuff, just no. No. Nowhere near James Avery and mass marketed Claire's. Again, no offense towards Claire's, but like those earrings didn't look like they even cost like, they didn't even look like they'd sell for more than like $3 for that pair. I mean, just, ugh. I know I sound like a snob, I'm not trying to, but I did grow up looking at Flawless jewelry and VVS1 jewelry. There was nothing that my biological father worked on that was less than a VVS2. And so, not to be rude, but no, Leslie, not James Avery at all, whatsoever. That guy lied so bad to you if you were told that it was from James Avery. So bad lied. But yeah, no, that was... there are pieces of plastic that would look better as earrings than those earrings from the Leslie saying they were from James Avery. Bakelite earrings would be prettier than those earrings that she claimed were from James Avery. I'm just saying, Bakelite earrings would be so much prettier than what she said was from James Avery. Not at all. I could make something out of clay that I'd rather wear in my ears than that. I know I sound snobby. I'm not trying to, but I did grow up the way I did, and people from the East Coast especially understand what I mean when it comes to a certain level of jewelry, and that was not even, that was just, no. Nope, 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 nope. And so just hideous, probably as hideous as she is. Um, Internally and externally, in my opinion, just my opinion, but yeah. Um, but I obviously did not think about the earrings at that time, because Sean's hand was more important to, prevent from having those issues. And then reconciled our relationship at the time and got re-engaged. And then I never heard from him again after a few text messages that kind of were similar to the ones that I received, now that I think about it, in reference to Matt, and the text messages that I received on that. So, but Jesse Leroy Hoover Jr. had said the aspects in reference to Congressman McCall. And so I didn't know that Sean's dad could have, I mean, obviously anybody, I'm not saying that anybody could be a congressman, but, apparently there are more than 2 congressmen or congresswomen, Congress in the state of Texas. I thought there were only 2, fine, make fun of me because I didn't know. I did have a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. But, I thought there also were only 2 senators per state, and apparently there's more than 2 senators per state, so I don't know what this era has done when it comes to that sort of stuff. I mean, I understand at this point, most likely it probably has to do with, population numbers and stuff, but, and then, living longer and whatnot like that. But I'm just saying, when the United States of America was first formed, it was supposed to be 2 senators per state. Oh, that's right, my mistake. It's 1 or 2 congressmen per so many in the population, and that makes sense. My mistake. But nonetheless, I don't know how many there are in the state of Texas. So, I'm just saying, when the United States of America was formed, and the different Constitution and not just the independence, but the different laws that were written for the United States of America beyond the Constitution. When those laws were written and formed, I'm just saying, there were a few things that were preparatory in order to ensure certain things would not be a problem. And so I'm going to end this particular recording on that note, because I might have gone into a little too much. But yeah, so I'm just saying, the original laws that were written for the entire United States of America did not just have to do with the Constitution. That was a large part of it. That's the more well-known part of it. But yeah, when certain things were written, it was what it was. Anyway, I didn't know that Leslie could have had anything to do with that, and I didn't want Sean to mess up his military career, despite what I was dealing with. So, irony of liking that show Scandal and shit like that, with certain things, with the different characters, that's kind of a little... Anyway, whole other ball of wax. and that's a really good show. But you guys have a good one.